the Federal Reserve is more worried about current public perception than they are about the actual health of the economy.
You're not actually getting wealthier. You just have more dollars that buy less stuff.
He turns to the daughter in front of the dad and says, I'm sorry that your dad does not love you enough for you to learn this lesson.
As you get closer and closer to God, you notice that the things that are acceptable for other people are not acceptable for you. They can do them, you cannot. Why?
If your wife was cheating on you, would you want to know?
Yes.
Would you?
Yes.
But if you just didn't say anything, you could still be married and still have a happy life and everything would be good. Do you really
This is another trick question, but yes. I would, because I want to know it's real.
Because you want to live in reality.
Everyone wants to get to the high places, but if you want to go high, you first have to go deep.
All right, what's up? Welcome to the Deep End. We're going to talk about something spicy.
Yeah.
Spicy and crispy and just all of the things. We're going to talk about the crash of just the world and what's going on for real and how people can not only understand what's happening, but how to do things with that understanding. Let's pray real quick just because it's a complicated subject. God, you're amazing. You know we love you, and we know that you see everything coming before it happens. In fact, that's one of the coolest things. People who do believe in you and have a relationship with you, you love to share secrets with them, and you love to share the future with them. So we pray that you would make this moment yours, communicate what you want to communicate, and we're going to have some fun. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks for coming back, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, for people who don't know, you are Bradley Gibb.
Yes, sir.
Sir Gibb of the Bradley territory. You have a degree in accounting, economics, statistics.
Yep.
A master's in accounting. Mm-hmm. You've raised over $150 million for various projects, funds, buildings. You were telling me about one of your projects in Utah, right?
Yeah, Park City.
Park City. This thing is huge. I remember you posting about it.
It's massive.
When's it going to be done?
That particular, so by 2 years out. They've got the hotel dried in. They've got the ski runs cut into the mountain. Roads are going in.
Wow.
It's fun.
It's
a ski resort.
It's a mountain.
Mm-hmm. It's a mountain.
All right. 2 years. We're going to go out there and do an episode.
That's right.
Do some skiing. You have not one, not two, not three, but you've built 4 seven-figure businesses, some of them up into the multis. And what you're building right now is going to probably be 8 figures and beyond.
Yeah.
And talk about that real fast. It's called Sovereign. What do you do?
So we look at this through everything I've built as I've gone this direction. I've done 2 things I think are unique in the financial space. As I've stayed in the world of finance and investing, but also entrepreneurship. And that has exposed a gap where business owners, they figure out how to make money. They master what we call the income game. But they assume that because there's dollar signs in the business world, that those dollar signs transfer over to the wealth side. And the skill sets learned on the business side transfer. You're smiling.
They do not.
Because they do not, right? They're completely, totally different skill sets.
Yeah.
And the mission of Sovereign is to work to make the entrepreneur world sovereign, even from their own business. Nobody focuses or there aren't financial services focusing on the wealth creating capacity of the entrepreneur themselves. So we come in and we are the chief wealth officer. So in your business, you have a chief marketing officer, client services support, whatever that. You have your C-suite of teams, but nobody there's worried all day long about is Taylor getting wealthy in this.
Right.
They're making sure the business is moving forward, that their domains are being mastered, that they still have a position, but nobody's worried about Taylor. That's our job. We come in and we say inside of all of this, we coordinate the activities of what's going on in the business with you personally getting wealthy.
Yeah, we ran a business for a while called Levels of Wealth, and this thing like exploded in the first couple of months. But I had this phrase of cash flow that comes from work is your income.
Yep.
Cash flow that comes from what you own is your wealth.
Yes.
And so the goal at some point, I think you would agree with this, but tell me if you don't, because you're smarter than I am on this subject. The goal at some point is to replace the active income with passive cash flow from what you own.
So here's how we frame that. So what is the difference between Dan Marino and Tom Brady?
Well, one's younger. And
regular season, they both dominated.
Yeah.
But what separates them in the conversation of the greatest?
I don't know.
Rings. Tom Brady won rings.
I was overthinking this question.
You were overthinking it.
Sorry.
Super simple, right? Rings.
I knew you were
That's
going to
it.
try to trap me,
That's
but
it.
then you did it.
No, I didn't. I made it simple. It rings, right?
Yeah.
And so Tom Brady gets to retire, greatest of all time, always in the conversation, right? The one thing we know, though, about all professional athletes is at some point in time, they're going to be the worst in the league. Like Joe Montana was cut from the Chiefs before the Chiefs were the Taylor Swift Chiefs.
Yeah.
He was cut. But nobody talks on SportsCenter about, oh, do you remember that time when Joe Montana sucked so bad he got cut? No, what do they talk about?
When he was the best.
When he was the best.
Yeah.
So the phrase in sports is once a champion, always a champion. But is that true in business?
No.
If you lose your business, what does everybody talk about?
Blockbuster.
You failed,
Yeah.
right? So what is the equivalent of a Super Bowl ring in business?
Assets?
Assets that you own that provide income that maintain your lifestyle that is not your business. So what you just said,
Yeah.
cash flow that you don't have to work for. And the key to it is we have to build assets. Most business owners are not building assets. They're not doing it inside of their business, and they're not doing it outside of their business.
Yeah,
so
so-
that shift is what creates wealth, and that becomes a Super Bowl ring.
You have this finite amount of time and energy. And what you're saying is that instead of just using this finite amount of time to enjoy the accolades of being rich, you should properly deploy the surplus so that you can be rich forever rather than just rich when you're at the top.
Which is, so our kind of catchphrase is we get to, as business owners, we have the opportunity to live rich and still finish wealthy. It's that, because the business provides a great lifestyle.
Sounds like a
enjoyment.
scam.
No, it totally is, and I guarantee that it will happen. Oh, wait.
And
no.
most people are thinking that.
Yes.
It's too good to be true. What do our parents teach us? If it's too good to be true, it probably
is.
And that's why most people live
Average,
paycheck to
mediocre
paycheck
lives.
to paycheck. They watch a video like this, they're like, that doesn't sound realistic, because it's not for the average person. But when you learn, that's why we're doing this podcast.
I don't want to be average. Both and.
We got to be careful right now, because me and you together could just go off on.
This is dangerous.
Yeah. And thank God Michael Cochini's not here, because we'd be talking about how the Nephilim were so wealthy that he would do it.
Oh, 100%.
They had a lot of money.
100%.
Okay, so dude, I want to get into some of that stuff, because that's the material that will make this podcast timeless. But we're in a really weird phase. By the time this podcast,
I'm going to slip something in before we get too much further, just
okay.
as a means of disclosure. Because where we're going to go and some of the opinions we're going to share are going to be 100% contrary to what you would expect a financial person to say.
Yeah.
So my disclosure is I have $0 in the market, not one single solitary dollar, nor have I created a single dollar of my wealth using the markets. So I'm coming, and I don't get paid for people to put money in the markets. So I think I'm coming at it from a completely independent standpoint of there are tools and abilities to build wealth that I believe, I don't believe in markets in general. So I'm just going to say the angles I'm going to come from are going to be different, and there isn't.
They're counter.
And there's a very different
RFA?
incentive. Mm-mm.
Okay. You know what an RFA
On
is?
purpose.
Registered financial advisor.
Gotcha. Can I ask you a question before we get started?
Yeah.
Is when we're going through this, what is like the practical application to just normal everyday people? What's happening in the economy as we're going through this? Why should people want to care about subjects like this? Why is this important to everyday life?
They should only care if they want to get wealthy. So
Yeah, I
the
would say
connection
that.
is if we don't understand the game of wealth, if we don't understand what is, then I believe people are being taught to play by a set of rules that don't apply. So if we can uncover the set of rules that actually apply, then they can be in the game.
But the markets always go up.
Sure they do. But doesn't mean you get wealthy just because you make money. It's America. It's too easy to make money. If you can't make money, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's still the land of abundance.
They haven't
But
spent
it's
enough time with me.
about building wealth.
If you can't make money, it means you have not spent enough time with me.
There you go.
Period. End of story.
But to me, it's not enough to make money. It's not enough to have more than I had. It's about achieving, like you said, we don't want to be average.
Yeah.
And just because we nominally make money doesn't mean we're actually getting ahead or creating wealth.
Right. What I thought you were going to say when I said the markets always go up is, yes, so do prices.
That's the more clear answer.
Because that means that we've read these books, The Millionaire Next Door and Dave Ramsey and all these people, which Dave Ramsey is actually a better business owner than he is an investor.
He's an investor, 100%.
So what he's doing is building businesses.
Mm-hmm.
He's not actually, mutual funds are so stupid. Like
The dumbest
there's
thing
zero reason in the world for you to put money in a mutual fund. But if your investment portfolio, let's say it goes from 100,000 to $1 million, then you have the same buying power when it's at $1 million that you did at 100,000. So you're not actually getting wealthier. You just have more dollars that buy less stuff.
We're keeping the wrong score. We didn't get any wealthier. That's exactly the thing. And most people don't see or can't comprehend that. It's like saying we're running the 100 meter dash, but we change the length of a meter and say people are getting faster by shortening how long a meter is, but nothing has actually changed.
Yeah.
And we're changing the measurement by which we measure, and that makes it impossible to know what reality is.
And one thing I would say before we dive into the actual deep end, you asked this question, what's the practical application for the normal, everyday person? That was the question, right?
Yep.
It is my opinion and my belief, and I'll stand by and defend this belief, that if you're watching a show like this, you should choose to not be a normal, everyday person. Now, there are more practical applications than that, but you study Winston Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Napoleon the Great, who was crazy. All of these people had something in common that you could find when they were young. You know what it is?
Ambition and strive to be better.
I thought you were going to say they're all men.
Oh,
No,
sorry, disappoint.
no, that's not the takeaway. It's that they believed from an early age that they were special. They did not see themselves as normal. They didn't see themselves as average. Winston Churchill was reportedly telling one of his closest friends when he was like 12 years old that he was going to be the prime minister of the country when the country needed him. How do you know that at 12 years old? You don't. You don't know it. It's not that they can see the future, it's that they are creating the future. And so I think that's one of the takeaways. If you're watching this whole thing, take that first and foremost. You're supposed to be wealthy because you're different. You're supposed to have access to this because you're different. That would be, and that's not even a takeaway. That's a reprogram.
That's good.
Is that okay?
Love it.
Good.
Okay. By the time this episode releases, we're 10 days past a very large crash in the markets. The Bank of Japan raised the interest rates by 0.25, I think, and everything went haywire. What actually happened? Are we done? Is that the only crash? Is like what's going on inside the markets?
This is going to sound so bad. I wish it had been a much bigger crash. It should have been a much bigger crash.
They saved it, apparently.
Something happened behind the scenes to make it not be that. So that's my answer to are we done? No, not at all, because it should have been significantly more. The markets, in my estimation, are at a minimum 40% overpriced.
Whoa. That's a lot.
It's a lot. But before we get to that, let's unpack Japan.
Okay.
So if you need, in order to understand this, there always has to be context, right? So anybody looking who woke up like 5 days ago and was like, who's Japan and what's going on with their economy? And then tried to explain it.
Only Americans thought, who's Japan? But yes.
So you need to go back to 1989. That's when this all started.
That's when I was born,
Welcome.
because I am special.
Yes. Now, I wasn't old enough to know I was going to Japan then either, because I was 9 years old at the time, or 8 years old at that time. But I've studied back that far, because the current economy and state of Japan started in 1989 when their stock market crashed. They had their Great Depression in 1989.
Okay.
And you know how long it took them to recover?
No.
Till like 7 or 8 months ago.
Oh, that's a long recovery.
A really long recovery. So before you believe that the markets always go up, ours have, but it's not the case everywhere.
Did Japan just consolidate for 30 years?
Just look up the Nikkei index chart, and it crashed in 89 and only achieved those highs again in the last year or two. I don't remember exactly when it was. So it was working its way back up. And the Bank of Japan has been trying everything desperately to fix that.
Okay.
And the reason why my belief anyway, the reason why their rate change was so dramatic, the Bank of Japan has been one leading out. They crossed 130% GDP, one of the first countries to do that. They just unlimited printing of money. And then they were the ones that championed 0% interest rates, negative interest rates. This is all coming out of Japan. They were the first ones doing it. Then the EU adopted it. Then US has adopted it as well. So they're like 20 years ahead of us as far as what I believe our issues in repricing our economy is going to much closely follow Japan than it will the Great Depression or the '08 crash. Those are not the models of where we're going. It's what Japan is doing.
That's bad news.
Terrible news.
Okay. So does that mean that, in your opinion, it's not going to be a 2008 V crazy crash recovery or a 2020? It's going to be a 20-year.
20-year. It would be much better if it was just crash, reprice, get over it, and get back to healthy growth.
Yeah.
But, I got asked this question on another podcast I did, Josh 40, and on Monday, he's like, this question, like, what's the crash going to look like? Or has the Federal Reserve figured it out? Like, have they finally learned their lesson? Because it kind of seems like they have.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of seems like they fixed the 2021, and they took credit for that not being as bad as it was. We had, Jerome Powell was celebrating the soft landing that we all had achieved. Like, it seems like they've learned enough to where they're able to manage the economy. The problem is prices don't dictate actual value. And as you look at the underlying productive capacity of the economy, we're 40% overpriced. So either it crashes by 40%, we get back to an actual valuation based on production, and then we can achieve real growth, or worse, the Federal Reserve figures out how to keep prices where they are and trick everybody into where the economy is, which means the way out of the recession is to let the economy grow by 40%. How long do you think it's going to take our economy to grow by 40%?
It depends on if the businesses are allowed to function or if they're suppressed by the U.S. government.
But by definition, if the market doesn't crash, then they can't. So they will be. It'll be a zombie economy until that recovers.
Okay.
So a really long time.
We need to unpack some things first so that people understand, because I can hang with you about 80% of the time. Jake can help us navigate, but we need to talk about the Federal Reserve. The government doesn't create money. The Federal Reserve loans it to the government.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When you look at 2020, all they did is created a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
We borrowed it. What's the difference between quantitative tightening and quantitative easing?
So quantitative easing is making that money that the Treasury prints more available, more accessible.
With
Tightening,
lower rates.
Whether it be lower rates or looser lending programs or however because you're right, the thing that Treasury hates is that we separated the Treasury from the government.
Yeah.
It's because they can't just directly put it in, so you have to have somebody take it from them, which is why Helicopter Ben would have loved to just drop money from helicopters, because then it's instant.
We learned that from Rome.
Yes.
Because,
and lots of economies too, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when the government is linked into creation of currency,
in Germany in the 1920s,
the whole thing dies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Germany.
Yep.
So
Venezuela,
now they're separate. Quantitative easing is when the reserve makes it easier to get access to the money. Tightening is what? Is
they pull money out of circulation.
Okay.
And since our money is not actually money, it's debt, we leverage money into the economy. So if the Treasury gets money into the hands of banks, because it goes the simplest path to money into the economy is it goes from the Treasury to banks, like commercial banks to more front-facing banks to the consumer, businesses, individuals, real estate, whatever that would be. But when the money goes from the Treasury to a bank, the bank gets $1 from the Treasury, access to $1, they can lend 10 out.
Fractional reserves.
This is fractional reserves, right?
Yeah.
So it has a multiplying effect. But on the reverse, which is harder to understand the collapsing power, is when they pull $1 out from the bank, 10 leave the economy. Or even worse, this is why crashes are so much quicker than the balloon deflates much faster than it inflates. Because if the Treasury pulls a little bit of money out and then you lose money in default on a loan, now if you defaulted on $1 million loan, 10 million just left the economy, along with the money that the Fed pulled out. So it's hard to know how much for them to tighten, because we also have,
There's
when
such
you
a
lose money,
a multiple.
It magnifies on itself. But to get money into the economy, like I said, is much more difficult.
And then the IRS can tax you on forgiven debt, which is so stupid.
Oh, it makes total sense.
It's phantom. It's not even real.
But yet you have to pay taxes on it.
But you have to pay taxes, which is where bankruptcies typically happen at the end of a cycle, because you can't pay the the debt. You get out of the debt, but then you're taxed on it.
Yep.
Hooray.
Wonderful.
This
Kick
is
me
a
while I'm
great
down.
episode so far. Okay,
but that's what happened in Japan. They pulled a little bit of money out through raising the rate just that much, but it has a multiplying, collapsing effect on the economy.
okay, so the Federal Reserve is a separate private entity.
It's not federal, and it's not.
Who
It doesn't
owns
have
it?
any reserves.
Who
But
owns
okay.
it?
Read a book called The Creature of Jekyll Island, and that will explain the Fed.
We can't say who owns it because we'll get banned.
Yeah, and we don't really know, but we know.
Yeah.
It's all the people you think own it.
Yeah, you talked about this on the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the yen, the Bank of Japan finally felt comfortable enough to raise rates again. Mm-hmm. They raise rates, all hell breaks loose. Why did that cause havoc in America?
That's a really good question. Why do you I don't know why it shouldn't. That's the confusing part.
We'll talk about,
they're totally unrelated. It shouldn't.
The reverse carry trade. You've got all these investors borrowing from Japan, converting it from a yen to a dollar, investing in American assets, paying no interest on their yen. Now all of a sudden they have to pay interest on yen, so their spreads go down, margin calls are made, but it shouldn't have caused a decrease in U.S. asset prices.
So what I think, if what you're saying ends up being true, you're right. If there's chaos at home and they have to bring money back, if that money is invested in the U.S. stock market, which if you go to any coastal city, Seattle, Vancouver, Portland especially, like half of all the real estate is owned by people in Japan and China. So we've seen their cheap money come over here seeking yield. Because if I can't make any interest over there, you're right, I'll borrow yen at zero or get paid to borrow and then go buy assets somewhere where I can generate a yield. So if that reverses and there's margin calls or I have to get on reverse positions or get out of it, then I have to fire sale assets to make do back there. And so that's what would draw down asset prices.
That's what I'm confused about, though, on why, like, the margin call in general, it wasn't a given. It wasn't a linear thing, because if the asset prices here stay unfazed, then you should not have a lot of people doing margin calls. But for some reason, the markets came down. They crashed here, and that's where the margin calls. So you got $1 billion that now you owe money on. You don't want to put $200 million in, so you sell $1 billion of stock at a fire sale. Most of those are in tech stocks.
Yep.
And as you blow through the supports, it's just boom, 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 boom. Everything crashes. But do you know what triggered the asset prices to go down in the first place?
No.
It's just the unpredictability of the markets.
The suspicion I have, so again, was I almost got a PhD in accounting, if you believe that. While we were studying to do that, we came across a study. This is how nerdy accounting studies are. But we looked at earnings history reports of companies. And we were replicating somebody else's study. This isn't my unique work or anything like that. But you would expect losses and gains in stock prices to be fairly uniform. Like sometimes you make money, sometimes you lose money, and sometimes you make money, but it wasn't. Losses consolidate. So earnings stretch and losses consolidate. It's like, why is that? Like, that doesn't make sense with just everyday life of the universe. But what happens is because companies are disproportionately punished when they lose money, what they do is they save up all their losses and they hide them in the closet until one comes along that they can't avoid. And then once they can't avoid it, then they're going to go to their closet and get all the other losses and take them all in the same quarter.
Yeah.
And then they've cleared the closet out, and then they give themselves room to then have nice, long, consolidated runs of profits. So I suspect that the economy generally has been putting skeletons in the closet and waiting for an excuse when all eyes are on Japan. Taylor can lose money and not get press about it or worry about it because everybody's talking about Japan. So like, hey, I'm gonna jump on this loss bandwagon and throw. And you didn't see that just inside a company's earning report. You saw it inside of industries. If the industry leader took a loss, all of the second tier companies decided to take a loss the same quarter, because then they're not getting. Then they get to say, oh, it's a tech industry thing. It's not us.
Yeah.
Right. So industries, sectors consolidate losses as well. And this now starts to make sense when you see like tech is all going. Why is tech all going down all at the same time? Like, aren't some companies still doing well and others do? It doesn't
Right.
actually make sense unless you look at it that it's coordinated.
Yeah.
And so I believe there's been massive coordination of losses, and they're looking for a way to dump those and not be the actual pin that popped it.
The quote that comes to mind is Warren Buffett's quote. This says, "In the short term, markets are a voting machine. In the long term, they're a weighing machine." And so what you're saying is that essentially you can prop up the price of something through the general consensus of like the predictive voting machine. But over time, the weight on the scale is going to go
Way
to what
out.
the weight on the scale is.
Yep.
Not what you think it should be. It's the weight on the scale. So if you're the Federal Reserve right now, do you lower or do you raise?
You lower, unfortunately.
Why?
Because again, the Federal Reserve is more worried about current public perception than they are about the actual health of the economy.
Has that always been the case?
No. I mean, if you go back to the 1980s, when, coming out of the 70s with hyperinflation, what was the
Volcker?
Paul Volcker, he cared about like the actual health of the economy.
His
and
rates are like, 20%?
Yeah, and he just said, pound sand, where this is what has to happen. And he wasn't swayed by whoever was running. I mean, everybody hated him on both sides. They wanted, like, read his biography. It's actually pretty interesting. He got hate from both sides, but he did what needed to be done. And then he set off the growth from the mid 80s all the way through 2000. But I think
But Volcker learned that because he made a mistake. And he lowered too soon. Then hyperinflation came back and he raised. I think that's what Powell's been so terrified of, which is why he's been high for a long time.
but it hasn't even been high. And they're already indicating that they're comfortable taking it down. But that's not because they're comfortable. Inflation isn't any lower, but it's been there long enough because we all have Twitter brains that can't think past 10 minutes. So we
First
think
of all,
interest
Brad,
rates have been high.
It's X, not Twitter. You Elon hater. Okay. Keep going. I see what you're
So
saying.
we have X brains, and we feel like it's been
sounds good to
up
me.
for a really long time.
Okay.
But it hasn't been. It's been up for like 6 months,
So you lower
Or
just
18
because of public perception?
100%.
But if you don't lower, isn't that really bad for like normal, average, middle class people?
Okay. Let me ask you a separate question, and then we'll answer this.
Okay.
This is going to sound totally out of left field, but it has a point to it, so
Okay.
hang with me.
All right.
If your wife was cheating on you,
Yeah.
would you want to know?
Yes.
Would you?
Yes.
But if you just didn't say anything, you could still be married and still have a happy life, and everything would be good, and I wouldn't have to deal with it. Do you really
This is another
actually
trick question, but
wanna
yes,
know?
I would because I
Because-
want to know what's real. And I
Because
see
you
what
want to
you're
live
saying.
in reality.
Yes.
So if you say, is it bad for everybody? It's bad for everybody not willing to live in reality.
Got it.
It's good for everybody who wants to live in reality. But do politicians want to live in reality?
no.
No, they want to come in and say, we're going to have affordable houses and a high stock market.
We're gonna pay
Like
for
those-
your
We cannot do
debt
that.
and yeah, all the same thing.
So for those not wanting to live in reality, then lowering rates is a good thing.
Okay.
Because they get to perpetuate. Like the only thing the only reason I believe that we didn't enter the massive crash is we had raised interest rates 18 months ago. If this crash happened 18 months ago when rates were at zero, they couldn't have cut anymore, and they couldn't have come in and fixed it.
They would have. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Okay, got it. But now because they've given themselves 5.5 percentage points of margin, now they can take it down, and then the voting machine kicks back on.
Kicks back on. And people knew that, and so they're like, okay, I don't have to mass deal with any of this because I know the Fed's we got the Fed put, they'll come in and they'll fix this. So we'll hang tight.
If they don't lower rates, how many more banks go out of business? If you had to guess,
All of them.
in the next 12
mean,
months.
Oh, if they don't raise rates, how many go out of business?
No. If they don't lower rates right now,
Yeah.
like how? Because he's got to be playing with the window of like banks are just carrying losses on their balance sheets.
Yes. Yep.
How long do they have to do that? It's not for infinity.
It can't be. Yeah. I mean, it's the crisis we actually have is a debt crisis. So in 2008, we had a housing bubble. In 2001, we had a stock bubble. So we had two asset bubbles. This is now a debt bubble that is holding the assets up.
And we can't sell off the debt because countries are not going to want to buy it. Our
And
credit rating just went down.
and you have, when you remove debt from an economy, you have a 10x reduction, right?
Got it.
Whereas you remove an asset, it's not the same impact. So it's going to be a massively larger shift.
But here's my thing that my brain cannot figure this out. And if my brain can't figure it out, I don't know what to do. It's not just America. It's Canada,
It's the
America,
world.
all
It's
of
the
Europe,
entire developed
China,
world.
Japan. Maybe not Russia. Russia seems to be on a different playing field. Why?
Because he's crazy.
Is their monetary system stable?
I don't know. I haven't studied that much.
Okay, got it. So you have BRICS that's coming in. Is BRICS a significant threat to our regime right now?
I think what
What is BRICS, by the way?
Brazil, Russia, India, China.
China.
Right? So it's that group of
And
countries
St. Louis.
and their
Because
economy.
we need an S.
Nice. Cool.
South Africa.
Okay.
Yes.
The sovereign city of St. Louis.
Yeah.
BRICS. It's a new agreement essentially that they're going to be able to buy things without pricing it against the
U.S. dollar.
U.S. dollar. Yeah.
But I think what's going to confuse a lot of people is they're looking at one debt-based currency against other debt-based currencies. If there's a global deflation of the leveraged currencies, the U.S. actually benefits from that before it blows up.
Got it.
So I think the U.S. is still, no matter how weak our foreign positions become or any of that, we still are the leading consumer of the world. We still produce a lot. We still have a lot of actual, if you really look at our economy backing our currency, we still have more backing to our currency economically than a lot of other countries do.
But
certainly more than Japan.
Is that based on consumption?
Yeah.
It's not based on
Which
production.
is why it won't last.
Right.
But I actually think the dollar gets a bump from global chaos before it gets dragged into it.
Okay, got it. Donald Trump is saying he would like to have a say in the interest rates. How bad is that?
That Donald Trump himself does, or that the president?
If the
that he sets the president.
if the
precedence
president
that
were
the president does.
given the opportunity
It's a
to
terrible idea.
meddle with the
It's
way
a terrible idea
Why?
because he is popularly voted in, and he knows in 4 years he just wants to vote 4 years from now. So that's a terrible idea.
There's no greater temptation to kick the can down the road than somebody who is in for 4 years.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like if you had a printing press in your basement, you would only use it for good, of course. Except for your mom that comes in and needs it, and then your sister needs it, and then her friend needs it, and you would not be able to not cave to the pressure of printing to solve the problems of those you care about around you.
Okay.
No one
who's
was the president.
Who's better for the economy, Kamala or Donald?
Oh, Trump for sure, because he's a businessman. He understands what incentives need to be there.
You just picked the man.
Yeah, I did 100. The white man, the old white man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't like women.
No,
I understand.
the problem Kamala has is she doesn't actually like wealth. She wants us all to be poor because she wants equality of outcome. And the only way to do that is make everybody poor.
Socialism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's worked so awesome so many other times that we should try it again, but we'll do better this time.
Well, socialism just kills
Everything.
countries.
Everything.
If you want to make a civilian easy to kill, you put him on victim socialism. So this probably comes back to population
So
control.
is modern monetary theory better than socialism? Yes. It's still not the answer, but it's better than socialism.
Hey, real quick, we'll be right back to the show, but we do all sorts of events. We're doing probably 2 events a month right now. A lot of that is not making its way to YouTube because it's different. It's on business, making money, client retention, marketing, and we just had an event on like parenting and entrepreneurship. It doesn't make sense to post them on this channel, but if you want, every month or so, we're sending out private links to people who are on our text list. So here's how you can get on it. If you want to be notified when something comes out, we have a lot of curriculum that's being built up through this text list. Text this number. It is a US area code, which is the +1 615-845-5977. You don't have to text any words specifically right now. Just text hello or whatever. It will send you back some instructions. You go fill out some information, hit submit, you're on the list. And anytime we release a private video or a private training, you'll get texted in your text app. Thanks. What is modern monetary theory?
It's using the Federal Reserve and the currency to incentivize growth or contraction in the economy. It's the belief that we can use a central bank to manage the business cycle and unemployment.
We are on MMT right now.
Yes. and we're all Keynesians now.
And we're never getting off.
Ever, not since 1972.
But there's no way to get off.
That's the problem.
An asteroid,
Yeah.
maybe.
Or an entire, like, eventually it will collapse. It can't continue forever, and it will have to change.
What do you think that collapse looks like, though, if it happens in our lifetimes?
I think the Federal Reserve has figured out, and there's still enough levers, that it's a 40-year correction. It's either a 40% drop immediately or a 40-year correction
From now?
from now.
Got it.
That the markets and the economy stagnate for 40 years, because that's how long it'll take to outgrow the excess debt that we've created.
So 1% per year.
Yeah. And if you look at the growth of the economy, that's about what we're at.
Is that the GDP? 'Cause
GDP growth.
The GDP would grow by more than that, right? 2 to 3?
It's not. It's coming down.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's not good. Is that just because of Kamala?
It's a combination of all the things, right? Just growth in markets. It's the fundamental factor that I think got people worried is it's easy to double $1, but it's really hard to double $1 million. So as anything gets bigger, the growth rate's slow. Mm-hmm. But the president says, well, not on my watch. So I'm going to figure out everything I can and so then we got these incentives where we pretend to care about growth rates instead of, is the average person actually doing well or not?
Yeah. I was having a conversation in Charleston. We had that event in Charleston.
It was awesome.
A month ago. I think it was like 2 months ago.
It was in June.
I was having dinner with some business owners from Australia, wildly wealthy. And they, one of their businesses is $50 million a year. He sold a business for several 9 figures. And we were talking about the differences between Australia and America. And when you boil everything down, it's really the same. It's, do I have food or do I not have food? And if you want to unwind the rule of law, you remove their ability to feed themselves, their family, to get water, all these things. How do you ever think we'll touch that level of poverty where, like, you're talking about a significant, if 40% was sucked out of the market right now, people wouldn't be able to eat. So then why buy land? They're just going to steal it from you. Like, how far does that go?
Again, if you really follow the only way true socialism or communism can get in power is to make everybody that desperate.
Right.
Because then you will vote away your rights for the promise of bread tomorrow.
So is it by design?
I think so. Unfortunately, I have to believe so. And whether it's by design or stupidity, that's the direction it's heading.
How do you react to that?
How do I, or does the average person?
You, and then your suggestion for the average person.
Life is always better for people who are rich. In any scenario, if you're rich, you're better off. So just get as wealthy as you can. And so that's like, obviously, well, great, Brad. How do I do that? Right.
Write that down, everyone.
Just
write
do
that
that
down.
Right.
Yeah.
If you already have money, by the way, go check out Get Control of Your Finances Now, which is another episode we did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was.
You forgot your own episode.
Did you start a business?
And you dropped a link right on the podcast.
Well done.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
Sorry, keep going.
You get wealthy. You get as rich as you can. But it sounds like how you respond to that is through choosing to live at a certain tier. You get to a certain tier of income.
Yeah, there's a formula. You want to know what the formula is?
Yeah.
This is what again, you're just asking the question. I'm willing to do anything to make this work, right? So first off, I love this question too, back to like reprogramming, right? If you fill in this sentence, I'm willing to do anything, but just don't ask me to fill in the blank, that's what you're going to have to do. So ask that question to yourself, and that's going to expose to you what you need to be willing to do to make that work. So you can play around with that for a minute. But
it can't be illegal.
Yes, as long as it's not illegal, right? But I used to fill in the blank before I became a business owner. It's like, I'll do anything, just don't ask me to sell. I was not a salesman. So that was the thing that, like, once I learned that skill, it then opened the doors to many other things that I was going to do, right? I'm still asking the question, I'll do anything except go on social media. So that's the one I got to probably get figured out, right? So you find that I'll do anything except that's probably the skill you need to develop because that's what's holding you back.
Okay.
But So back to my formula. The formula in today's world to get wealthy is focus on your income production exclusively until you can save 50% of your income. So if you can't save 50% of your income, you can go the Dave Ramsey route and cut your expenses in half, but that's not very much fun. I don't subscribe to that. It's easier to just go make money. So make enough money to where you can save 50% of it. And don't do anything that's not that. Ignore the markets, ignore investing, ignore everything that's not. Create enough income to save 50% of it. Then we can then go on the path to protecting that money and acquiring assets that will then replace our income. Like that becomes the target.
Isn't that still going to unwind though?
Because
if we do get to that place where no one has any money,
I don't think it'll be that nobody has any money. It's just the money you have won't buy what you want it to buy. But if you have a printing press that prints money and can adjust for that, you can stay. To me, the only way to stay ahead of inflation is to have a business or have assets, but not just simply an income. But if you can, because in order to get paid, you have to create value. And as long as I can figure out how to create value, it will command the dollars I need to go do whatever else. So really the answer is I need to figure out how to create value instead of hoping somebody else smarter than me is going to create it on my behalf and give me enough of it to be okay. Which is the lie that we've been told. We've been told you don't have to be productive. Wall Street will be productive on your behalf. And you can give them money and trust that they know what they're doing and that they're smarter and they're better and everything will work out just fine. Just go all in, put everything there, and then wait until they give you what is your due. That model is dead and gone and is never coming back. So either it's a 40% crash in that, or it's a 40-year correction to it. But like people right now that are in their 40s saving to 401ks have been told that they're going to have enough money to retire. They're going to wake up 20 years from now and have a lot in their 401k account, but it will not be sufficient to retire.
Because the cost of living is going up.
Has changed.
Can Elon Musk fix it?
If he's allowed to, maybe, if they stop suing him every time he turns around. I think he's one of the most important people on the planet right now is Elon Musk because of what he's doing for free speech and opening up the door to a conversation that nobody wants to have.
Yeah. Free speech and just general basic production.
Just living in
like producing, creating.
I think how many people he's inspired to do the same thing.
Yeah. Did you hear that of the people that are stranded at the space station?
No.
Apparently there are two astronauts that are stranded at the space station. They've been there for like 2 or 3 months. And NASA doesn't trust their rockets to go get them. So they're talking with Elon
to come literally save NASA.
He would literally he's a private company controls space travel.
Wow.
That's what that would translate to.
Which would be better for space travel.
Yes. If you want to slow down innovation, put the government in charge of it.
Yeah. I mean, unless you really like your experience at the DMV, yeah, you should probably put the private sector in charge of it.
So it's your belief that the government's too big?
Massively.
Shrink the government?
Yeah.
Okay.
So back to Kamala or Trump, right? My actual answer is neither. Like if I have to choose between them, I'll choose MMT over socialism.
Yeah.
But if I had my choice, I would have chosen, the only candidate that came close to doing what actually needed to be done was Ron Paul and end the Fed. That's what has to happen. So we get back to, the Fed keeps the blinds over reality. And so now we can't actually adjust and do what's necessary.
If I can go back for 1 second to something you said before to play devil's advocate. You said everybody needs their own business, especially people in America. At the current time, it's 333 million people live in America. What happens if every single individual in America has their own business? What happens to, is that actually like feasible? Like, does that work for the rest of the economy? Like, who's working for what companies? Is that actually a feasible solution?
When we have 333 million views on the video, then we'll have to wrestle with that question.
Sure.
More people than currently have businesses need businesses. That'd be the first answer to it. The second, you and I talked about this at our favorite Mexican restaurant, whatever that place was.
Julio's.
Uncle Julio's.
Yeah.
Shout out to them. The pendulum is swinging, right? We consolidated business when public companies became a thing, right? And we grew gargantuan corporations. But that only started in like the 60s, right? That pendulum with the gig economy started it. It's swinging the other way to where we're going to decentralize, and those companies are going to shrink in their employment numbers and all of that. So they're like, and we're seeing it in the Great Resignation and how like people are not satisfied in the job market. So there has to be more people who figured out 330 million people is not a barrier. It's an opportunity, because there's 330 million people who have problems that need to be solved. So it is that. Now, I will also expand the concept of you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur necessarily. You can also be an intrapreneur, where your client is the business that you work for, and you're going to treat them the same way you would have treated if you owned your own business, your clientele, and you are going to intrapreneurial add so much value that you become a linchpin and you increase your income to where you can save 50% of it.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good bit. And you talked about Ron Paul. A great book is by Danielle D. Martini Booth. She worked at the Fed. She wrote a book called Fed Up, and it's about the same thing. So a lot of these really smart people are like, the Fed just needs to go. But what do we replace it with?
We go back to a hard money system. We stop changing the length of measurement, and money is not good or bad. Having more of it or less of it doesn't matter. It just is the tool of exchange to go be able to create value. And if we stop messing around with it, we can get back to reality and we can begin positive growth. The greatest growth we ever saw in the history of the world was while we had a gold standard. So whatever version of it that becomes, we have to go back to a non-manipulated monetary system.
Like, would a CBDC be the answer to that?
It could be.
Okay.
I don't necessarily care the form. I care that it's not politicized.
It's got to be sovereign.
Yeah.
So you are a fan of sovereignty, but yet you own no Bitcoin.
I don't own any Bitcoin.
This seems to be an oxymoron.
I have been told I need to be educated, and I'm working on that.
Well,
I do own a lot of gold, which is the original.
Do you own ammo?
Like pew pew?
Bullets?
Yes.
Pew pew. If it gets real bad, that's the currency.
Well, and this
And whiskey.
this may sound crazy too. I have a year's worth of food stored in my basement.
Yeah, so do we.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not in our basement. It's in cabinets, but I would tell people where they are, but I don't want them to come break in
No,
and steal my food.
it's not in my house.
Oh, that's it.
I mean,
Maybe I
it
shouldn't
is.
move.
It is, but I'm just saying it's not in my house. So don't come to my house. Well, I have ammo, so don't come to my house.
Yeah. Yeah, I buy ammo like every month.
I have a recurring subscription.
Stock it up.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so here's my concern. Because whether we like it or not, the politicians have a measure of influence over where the country goes. I want to share my concern with you and then see if that's validated or if I'm overthinking it and being a fear mongerer. If I had to pick between Trump and Kamala, I would probably be like, let's maybe get someone who is both young and intelligent. So right now we have one or the other. Mm-hmm. Trump's more intelligent, but my fear would be if we don't get Trump back in at this point, the spectrum goes left and left and left and left and left. And this is where you get Adolf.
It's possibly irreversible.
No, well, the only reversal is you get someone in 15 years who makes Trump look like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Because he's so extreme. You talk about these cycles and pendulums. We've been pendulum swinging to the left so much that if we don't get anything to balance it out, eventually, I mean, study how Hitler got to power.
Yep.
Everyone was starving to death. Mm-hmm. And you get this crazy person, and they're like, that's
We'll give
better
it to
than
them.
starving.
Yep.
Is that a realistic threat?
Absolutely. I mean, we are more open. Like, if you tried to describe to people even 100 years ago about how much control and influence the government has, like if you described COVID,
They wouldn't believe it.
they wouldn't believe that was even possible. Like we threw tea in the ocean over a 1% tax.
Yeah. And we beat their ass good, man.
Yeah, over a 1%. Now, like,
Hold on. Did you see that in England, British police have been arresting people for what they say on social media. And did you see all of the Americans overloading the online British police chats?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that they were arresting people.
Dude.
I saw the thought police came out.
There's
but I didn't see a
tens of
response to it.
thousands, and it's all over X, and you can see it, and they're like, help. And there's like, hi, you've reached the British police. What's going on? And they're like, I need help right now. Well, where are you? I'm at a McDonald's. Which one? It's the one by the Starbucks. Which one is that one? It's the one by the Pizza Hut. They're just wasting their time. Another one
great.
is so bad. They're like, I need help right now. I have found an Albanian. And the British police is like, okay. And they're like, I captured it. Please send someone. And then the police goes, why would you do that? And the guy says, it's an Albanian. Please send help right now.
Self-explanatory.
And this is over and over and over. That's like kind of the American spirit, I would have to say.
And if it's alive and if it's even a spark of it anywhere, that's still here.
Well,
like,
dude,
if
it's
anything
definitely,
can change it, it's still here.
It's definitely going. And here's my bro, if Trump would have been assassinated, it would have been a civil war.
So a friend of mine put this in probably the best terms that I had. Like, he's like,
I'm not advocating for that, by the way.
No.
I'm just saying
no. But this was interesting. He said, dude, God saved Trump. But not for the reasons. Like, everyone's like, well, then Trump's the anointed one. No. I think God was like, let's just turn his head. It doesn't matter whether Trump gets elected or not. He just didn't want us to go to civil war. He knew it's not the time for that. That's my answer to why he was spared. Wasn't because Trump's the white knight that's going to solve everything. It was like, we're not ready to handle the backlash of that. Let's just have a little bit of time.
Yeah. If you because Rogan's talked a little bit about this, and then there's a couple books that have talked about like what would happen if civil war happened now. And the popular mantra is like, and Biden even said this, he's like, how are you going to do a civil war? Do you have fighter jets?
Yeah.
Which is a little bit ominous. But the military...
So which candidate is pushing as her second point gun control?
Yeah, Mama Kamala.
Yeah.
But there's more guns than citizens in the country, and I don't think that it would work that way. I think the military would fracture. I think the military would split in half, because there's a lot of people in the military who aren't idiots, and they would just stand down the
defy
command
orders
and defect.
Yeah.
And so it would be really bad. Not to mention, it would be bad for people, but it would also be the geopolitical hierarchy. It would completely go away. We would be removed from that.
No. That would be the worst. I mean, a coordinated return to normalcy would be significantly better than a civil war.
Yeah.
But like Jefferson said, generally it's blood that changes regimes.
Okay, so if you're a normal, everyday person, back to that.
I thought we got rid of that term at the beginning of this show.
You just learn, become more valuable. You do more than... People got mad at you, by the way, the last time we talked about how there's no such thing as being overpaid.
Or underpaid.
Or underpaid.
They did get mad at that.
Yeah. They weren't very happy because I don't know why they follow me, but you become more valuable. You do more than you're paid to do. And do you buy assets or do you not? Like, you're not in the market. So what are you talking about?
So, well, right there, let's expose that for a second. Like, you just repeated what Wall Street has spent 30 or 40 or 50 years trying to get everybody to believe.
Indoctrinating.
That assets and Wall Street are synonymous.
Got it.
They're not. I have lots of assets. I was able to completely turn off a business, restructure it from the ground up, write you a check that was way too large. Actually, it was a great investment, but with no income coming in because my assets paid for my lifestyle. So, but none of those assets are in Wall Street. So that first, that's what I want to expose first, is as soon as this whole crack up started to happen, every financial advisor on the planet jumped ahead of the stream and at 6 a.m. on Monday morning posted to everybody, friendly reminder, don't knee-jerk reaction and crazy over all this stuff because it's all going to be fine. And they're right. The Fed came in and saved it. It's going to be a 40-year level where financial advisors will be able to say, nope, the market never crashed. Everything was totally fine. But what they can't answer for you is, I'm going to ensure that you're wealthy. You can't have both. And Wall Street is giving you prices. They are not giving you wealth.
Yeah. Got it.
So that's the call to everybody is wake up from, like, it worked when you were in 1970 to go to college because only like 5% of people went to college. And then you got the absolute best job and you could save 50% of your income and you could buy into the bottom of the stock market and ride that thing up and retire in 2000.
Yeah.
If you have a time machine, go back, that will work beautifully.
Yeah.
But that time passed.
Okay. So I'll check your phone on Telegram. I just sent you something. We'll put this video on after editing.
Cool.
Because Brad, what you're saying is really good, but you could also just do this.
Yes. That is exactly. Exactly.
Is that
what's
not
happening.
the state of the world?
That is, and we are asking for it. We are electing politicians to do that for us.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. That's where everyone's at.
We don't want the stock market to go down. We don't want unemployment to go up. We don't want we don't want any problems, but yet we want prosperity.
Yeah. So is unemployment a big deal right now? It's 6 months behind, and it just broke their limit.
Mm-hmm. Which again, which is why they have to lower rates, because lowering rates does what to unemployment?
Makes it go down.
Typically fixes it,
Yeah.
right? And now we have potential asset issues, so they want that. They're going to lower rates because of that.
Should we lower taxes?
Well, yes.
So
we
here's
should
the
get rid
here's
of
the
taxes.
beautiful idea of this. You have Senator Warren, and she's like, you should not lower taxes, but you should lower rates. The ideas are the same thing. If you lower the cost, then you increase the hiring.
Yep.
And it's like, they cannot be this dumb. They're playing a game. Or are they that dumb? I don't think they can, though. Like,
that's the problem. Is there's a whole middle section of politicians that are that dumb, and then there are ones above that are wanting to consolidate power, and they know how to do it.
got it.
And you need to know which one you're talking to.
Senator Warren,
I think consolidating power.
got it.
The federal chairs, they're consolidating power. The people at the top of the echelon, they're pulling strings, even the ones that aren't even in there anymore, Obama's, they're consolidating power. And they're doing things intentionally to do that. But then there's a whole bunch of people that just believe the narrative or want, like, they paint a compelling picture. Of course I want. Like, the way to spot a lie, I was teaching this to my kids the other day because, again, they don't know how to process this stuff. And they're like, well, Kamala got up and said she wants a world free of violence. Isn't that a great thing? Yeah, of course. And then the next step to that is, well, we have to get rid of assault rifles to be able to do that. And so if you go from, I want a world of violence, and then you say, oh, okay, yeah, then that plan we get, then you're signing up for the plan. What I was teaching my kids is, if the premise that the argument is built on is false or not possible, then you have to reject the plan to get there. Is a violence-free world possible?
No.
No, it is not. It is an impossibility. It never can be because we're in a fallen world. And so if you start with an ideal that is unachievable and then lay out a plan to get there, you have to reject the plan because it cannot get you the outcome that it was designed to get.
And have you seen the riots in the UK? They don't have guns. So a lot of violence happening in the UK right now.
Without guns. People, it's interesting, but people, when they get mad, they get violent. That's just kind of the game.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Got it. Jake, are you good?
I've got a bunch of comments if you guys want
Ooh.
to hear them
Yeah,
from
let's
some of
go.
the old content. So this is the one. It talked about valuing the water bottle.
By definition, if I gave you the $1, I valued the bottle. It's unknowable.
So this is where the video is coming from.
Yeah.
Got a lot of people saying a lot of things. Some people say, someone said, it doesn't work this way. Evaluation of money. My employer pays the money my employer pays me is always less than the evaluation of money that I got. The employer has tons of options to optimize its own profit. So what I'm seeing in a lot of these comments is like a lot of people feel, obviously this is a reprogramming thing, but a lot of people feel like they're at the disadvantage. They do not have leverage. Other people are talking about inflation. Someone said until inflation made it so you can make 3 times minimum wage and still struggle. People are like, they're making $30 an hour, but it's still not doing what it used to. So I think if you want to speak to something, it'd be like the feeling of disadvantage. People feel very like under leveraged.
That question was too long for me, so.
I'll jump in.
And then next time, just hit question by question, and then we can hit
Well,
them.
first off, has anybody in the history of time started out making minimum wage and then become successful?
Yes.
Okay, so can you.
Yeah.
So the problem in all of those comments is the victim mentality that's holding them back from changing the situation. So it's uncomfortable. The truth is uncomfortable, but that doesn't change. Like I don't like to be uncomfortable, but if I just adhere to my feelings and avoid being uncomfortable, then I'm going to stay where I'm at.
How intolerant of you, Brad?
Totally and completely.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm also intolerant of? Not being good at things.
Yeah.
And so you need some lack of tolerance to change your life. I don't like not having food. I don't like having more horsepower than I have right now. And I just don't tolerate that.
You want to know my definition of a bad friend? Someone who is close to me, who is tolerant of things that they should not be tolerant of.
Do you know who's the least tolerant of who you are? God.
Yeah.
He doesn't tolerate you
Yeah.
and your current status because he knows he created you to be, and he knows exactly what you can be, and he doesn't tolerate you to stay there.
Yeah.
He gives you commandments and a plan and a vision to be significantly more than that, and everybody looks at that as that doesn't understand God. Love is not acceptance.
Yeah. Can we hit a tangent on that for just a second?
Go deep.
The person who wrote that comment, I don't know who it is. I don't know their name. I don't know anything about them. But I will say that that is most likely a reflection of their friends and their circles and who they are. And we've got a lot of people who are just catfish bottom feeders, hanging out with other bottom feeders. And it makes them feel good to hang out with other bottom feeders. When you go into a season of growth, you know what's fascinating to me is the people who are not willing to grow all of a sudden become very upset with me for growth. And the people that I need to spend time with that are ahead of me, beyond where I'm at, I don't feel like I belong with them. Why? Because I don't. Until I do. And it's this perpetual wheel of you spend so much time with losers and idiots who tell you that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's Barack's fault. It's Donald's fault. It's the government. It's your mama. It's this person. And I think when somebody finally hits that point where enough is enough, they no longer care whether they are accepted at the next level. They're just going to go to the next level. And they become intolerant of anything that reminds them of that level they should not belong at. So it's God, yes, but it's also the power of having like that. Bro, I'll tell you right now, you just got crappy friends. You got friends who don't give a shit about you. And they're probably telling you that it's your employer's fault. Believe that if you want, but there's no freedom in that.
There's no freedom, there's no progress in that. I'll say it another way. This will be the one that everyone's going to get mad at too.
Yeah.
So I was born, I'm a white male born in the United States into the middle class. So I had every excuse to just be mediocre and average and live comfortably. Like I didn't have to try anywhere and I would have been just fine. Right? And when I hear, people get up on stage and tell their story of losing everything and hitting rock bottom and then turning it all around and being successful, I kind of find myself looking at it being like, well, duh. Of course you did that. You had nowhere else to go. You were already at the bottom. There was only one direction to go. So clap, I guess. And I don't want to take anything away from you, but instead I look at what I had to do. I got 4 degrees and I was working on Wall Street. And on Wall Street, I realized I have the common denominator across the wealthy clients was they all ran businesses. So I looked at that, I was like, oh, I came here to be wealthy. That is a new paradigm that was given to me. And instead of rejecting it, I quit my Wall Street job in 2008. I didn't wait to hit bottom. And to me, in some ways, that's a much harder decision. To let go of mediocrity,
yes,
to have excellence,
yep,
then fall to the very bottom and then go achieve excellence.
Yep.
And I've done that multiples of times,
yep,
to where I've let go of, I quit a $500,000 a year gig working 2.5 days a week to then start the business that I'm in and running now. So that to me is bravery, if you want to call it, or gumption, or whatever. It's intolerance of just being average. So you have to develop an intolerance to being comfortable and average if you want to be successful. And one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to just stay where you are uncomfortable, or you're going to wait till you hit bottom and then change. Why not change now? Why not figure it out now?
Yep.
Can I ask a question for you both as dads? There's people that believe that God is the Father. You talked about this. We just put out a short about this yesterday. And you said love is not acceptance. And you have kids, and you're going to tell your kids, like, I'm proud of you, and I want you to move forward. Can you go deeper? Can you guys go deeper on that line of love is not acceptance for people that believe God is their Father, and they're like, but they still are in that victim place, that victim mindset?
I was going to turn it over to Pastor Welch.
Pastor T Money.
Okay, so like Kate, she was with us last night. She was at the mixer. I walked around the corner and she was, the restaurants, how you have like the different sodas and then you have like a can of ice or like a bin of ice, and she was playing in the ice. And I was like, Kate, come over here. We don't do that. That's not what we do. I think it's literally the exact same thing. And as you level up the economies of scale and as you level up the totem pole, so to speak, everything in my relationship with God has turned into this. Son, we don't do that. When I was a child, it was playing in the ice. When I became a teenager, it was watching this movie or doing something with a friend. As an adult, it was running a business that didn't honor God, or it was saying something that might have been cruel, even though it was true. And as you get closer and closer and closer to God, you notice that the things that are acceptable for other people they're not acceptable for you. They can do them, you cannot. Why? Your calling is bigger. Your maturity is higher. You're more educated. You know the rules at this level. I don't think that love and acceptance have any correlation to the same things. They're completely different topics. I can love someone deeply, and because I love her, like, let's say, and this is probably where, for me, it would get like the scariest kind of conversation, because we've got a government that's like, if a 7-year-old thinks they're a boy, they should be able to be a boy. And it's like, oh my God, like, no. I read a book called The Anxious Generation. We talked about this last night. Like, my kids are not having social media until they're like 16.
Yep.
I don't want any dumb nut perverting my kids with stupid ideology. But at some point, you have to think about this. Like, my 5-year-old is going to become a woman, and she's going to make decisions, and there are going to be decisions that I probably don't agree with, that I don't think are good. She's still my daughter, and I still love her, and I still accept her as my daughter, but I don't accept or approve of the behavior. And I think God's the same way with us. And I really believe that most of what you're talking about is actually a byproduct of Christians not doing their jobs. And therefore, when people get older, they're craving acceptance so much that they don't know where else to go. That's my take on it.
That's good.
I've got a little story.
Go for it.
My little brother is my hero in a lot of ways. So we grew up on a farm. He's running the farm. So he'll send me a text with a picture of his pickup with the dog in the back. I'm like, I made the wrong choice, right? So he's like I get to live
dream.
Vicariously through that. But one of his challenges is reliable labor. And my dad had always run the farm off of, he liked hiring high school kids to give them a chance to learn a work ethic, and he was more than willing to work. So that was like his give back, is he always just hired local kids around to give him that opportunity. So my brother's tried his best to continue that. And this past summer, they're running a baler. This is probably a $200,000 piece of equipment. It weighs 40 tons. It's massive.
Jeez.
And there's a 17-year-old girl driving it. And he sees it over, and it's driving a little erratically. It's not doing exactly what it should. So he goes over there, and come to find out, she had propped her phone over the control panel, so she can't see anything of what's actually going on. And she's watching TikToks there. So my brother pulls her aside and has a stern conversation with her. He doesn't call her any names. He doesn't degrade her in any way, but he's talking with the urgency that the situation commands. Because if she wasn't paying attention with that $200,000 40-ton piece of equipment, she could kill somebody or herself. So he was talking to her in that tone. And she begins crying. She calls her dad, and her dad comes out and trying to handle the situation in what he felt was appropriate. He was going to send his daughter home, and he was going to finish the job for her. And this is where my brother's my hero. As that is transpiring, he says, you know what, why don't you both go home? We'll figure it out. And then he turns to the daughter in front of the dad and says, I'm sorry that your dad does not love you enough for you to learn this lesson.
Whoa. Jeez.
Wow. In front of the fight. But that is exactly what it was. That if she doesn't learn that lesson, she'll take that behavior, playing in the ice bin, and translate that to all the rest of the decisions, and she will not be set up for success. And she will have she will have to learn that lesson at some point in time. Why not learn it now when there are not massive consequences on the line? Her livelihood, her marriage, her kids, those types of things. Why not learn it now?
Wow.
So that's the way I feel about it. But then back to the acceptance part of it, the cool thing about, like you were saying this, if you find yourself around the bottom feeders and you're leveling up, you don't have to take them with you.
Right.
But love is staying with a person until they change. So God will stay with us until we change. That's his love. He will never leave us behind in that, but he will also never change the standard to make it feel like we changed or won. So to me, that's both sides of it, is he'll never leave us. And he'll always be there for us to change.
100%. This said, to tie it in, since we're at the spiritual level, we'll just stay here for a second. I said something, at this point it'll be 2 weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. I don't remember when this video was, but someone on one of my posts on YouTube said, they're like, man, at your heart, you're a Muslim. And
interesting.
I don't know what he's saying. I know exactly what he's saying. In fact, I think a lot of Muslims have more spiritual power than Christians. But at the beginning of the video, I just addressed it and I said, I love you. I'm not a Muslim, but I love my bros and Muslim sisters and all of you. I love you. And somebody like about had a heart attack who's like a Christian religious nut job. It was like, they are not your brothers and sisters, and you're too tolerant and you're too accepting, and they're going to perish and blah, 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 blah. Every time. And I went back and forth with him for a little bit until I found out he was crazy. And then I stopped engaging. But one of the things he said, he's like, Jesus always made people change. But when? It's not whether they changed or not. It's when did they change? They didn't change right away. It took him a long time. That's why he was cleaning up for the years. Like, hey, don't do that. Even right before they took him, one of his disciples like cutting the ear off of someone, taking matters into his own hands. They didn't change right away. And what you said is so powerful, because it brings in this question of time. God will stay with you until. When is until? How long? A year? 12 years? 50? 60? Don't matter.
Yep. He'll be there.
It's going to be whenever you are ready to change. And I think people are so uptight about making everything contort to the way that they think the world should be. And what we really have to do is we have to just, like, me and you can disagree on something. And in fact, we probably do. That doesn't change the fact that we love each other. We still love each other. I just think you're dumb on a certain issue and you think I'm dumb on a bunch of issues. But there should not be this antagonistic adversarial approach to it. And it wouldn't work with your kids either. So that was a really good lesson.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice clip.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
That'll get spicy.
Okay, so basically, we're all screwed. The world's going to hell in a handbasket, and buy ammo. That's the lessons I've got from today.
I think it is.
Yeah, and maybe some Bitcoin if you're feeling adventurous. Anything else that you feel like is pertinent for people to know right now,
or do?
Yeah, I mean, it's just back to the concept of we have to wake up to the system changed.
Yeah,
and we have to be in alignment with that. So again, it's increase. If you want security through this coming chaotic time period, whatever it looks like, whether it's a full-on crash or a stagflation adjustment, become more productive, be in control of what we're doing, and build wealth inside of your control.
Yeah. which brings us to probably the number one investment of all time that I've ever made. And I've made money on lots of stuff. I've lost money on lots of stuff too. I've made money in real estate, lost money in real estate, made money in the markets, lost it in the markets. Like I've gone up and down, but thousands of percentage points of return have gone into me becoming smarter. If I invest into someone who knows something that I do not, which is why we have clients. People pay you because you know things, you know how to do things, and the yield, the return on education is vastly superior to the return on anything else.
And it's so funny that most politicians would agree with you on that, but they're not actually backing that up. They're saying, go get an education, have somebody else put their knowledge into you.
Yes.
And that defines an education. And then go get a job and have somebody else put their skills into you. And that's going to validate your value. That's not what we're talking about here. You like the reason I ended up with 4 degrees is I accidentally got them. Because I showed up and saw this menu of stuff. So I want to learn that. I want to learn that. I want to learn that. And then they started sending me degrees because I had completed the requirements to do this. But I was just wanting to learn and figure out how to connect this stuff. So education is looking at an outcome or an impact that you want to have in your own unique ability, and then bridging that gap to my unique ability and adding value to someone else's life. That's what we invest in. We don't invest to go get a piece of paper that somebody else gave us or a credential that somebody else gave us. We legitimately become more valuable to the people around us.
Right. All right. Well, we'll share one story and we'll end here. I started reading a book last night called Seeing Behind Enemy Lines. Have you ever read any C.S. Lewis, like Screw Tape Letters and some of my favorite work? But this woman has a gift to see into the spirit world. We're actually about to interview someone who sees the spirit world like we see the physical.
Should we tell people who it is or no? No,
okay. It's a secret.
Okay, cool.
But there's a story in this book, and she was asking God. God asks her, he says, if you have 2 armies and one army can see everything before the other army does it, who would win?
The army that can see.
And she's like, of course. And she's like, but how do I do that? God's like, you just ask me and I will tell you. So she goes through this journey. It's in 2016. And she starts going through this journey of praying and asking for God to show her things. She has a dream. She wakes up one night and an angel is there and takes her to a boardroom. There's like a table like this, and there are beings at the table. And they're having this conversation about a revival that's happening here, a church that's growing here, a school that's over here that's like got some people praying for it, all this stuff, right? Mapping it out. And one of the demons is having a real problem with one of these churches, because where they go, they can confuse everyone, but there's this group of people who he called the fasted ones. And he's like, they can see me and the other people can't. And so this general, they're problem solving and she's just watching. And the general's like, well, everyone else who's not fasted, can we just sow some drama and keep them stupid? And so like the Screw Tape Letters, it's like strategic. And the fascinating part is keep them stupid and confused. Stupid and confused. And the stupid was not a derogatory term. It was like, can we keep them
uneducated?
Dumb?
And lack of clarity.
And they have no knowledge. This is why we talk about this all the time. It's like God in the Old Testament is exasperated. He's like, my people are just so dumb. They're destroyed for lack of knowledge. And it's, if they would ask for it, I would give it to them. But they're distracted with this people and an idol here. And when we talk about education, it's really your ability to learn as you go through life. You've got to get smarter. Like, I do not think that there is any benefit to being stupid and confused.
Yeah.
None. In fact, for Christian people who believe in God and believe that there's a spirit world, a lot of times one of the easiest tools for the enemy to use is to keep you stupid and confused.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know, you won't be able to see anything. And I think that's a great place to end, because even with finances, the economy, Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, and God will give you secrets. And the problem is sometimes he can't give you secrets because you don't understand anything.
You're not smart enough to hear or understand.
But even if you did hear, if it was like,
process it.
2 weeks ago, it was like, hey, there's a reverse carry trade that's going to unwind the markets. People be like, I
don't know what to do with that.
What do? You don't understand anything. So your level of understanding has to match a certain ability so that God can even communicate to you. Or else he's literally like, have you ever seen a piece of business literature in a pop-up book?
No.
Why?
It's not smart
It's
enough.
not possible. Like, you can't put 1,000 pages of curriculum in a pop-up book. Like, it's not going to work. So what do we have to get the kids educated enough to be able to read more than pictures. They have to understand words. The same exact approach is happening as you grow and you want to learn finances. You want to learn the world of the spirit. You want to learn how to build a business. But you invest into someone to teach you how to read. And I don't mean that I'll make fun of people because they can't read, but I mean legitimately understand. And then the secrets make sense.
Beautiful.
That's good.
Anything else?
I think we're good.
You're in charge, bro.
Good episode.
Brad, thank you, man.
Thanks for having me, dude.
This is a lot of time for you to
This
invest
was
with us.
very fun.
All right, cool. See you guys next week.